Welcome to the next installment of the NCM Heritage Series. The one and only 1983 Corvette has long been a mystery. Lots of stories surrounding the history of this car. Well, we've gathered together those involved with the fourth generation Corvette, those that were actually there to build the car, that know the true story behind the car and why there's only one of them. Why this one? Why save one car that was right in the middle of the build? Not the first one, not the last. Was it a fitment car that was just left behind at the plant and forgotten? We're gonna piece the story together for you from the beginning when it was rolling off the line at the plant to how it got here at the National Corvette Museum.
The run of the C3 was too long. By 1975, the car industry was dealing with safety regulations and emissions regulations. They were soon to be required to meet fuel economy regulations. And honestly, General Motors did not have the technology to do that stuff very well yet. So we struggled for several years with engine technology in particular that was not able to do a great job with the emission requirements that came upon us year by year. We started the C4 conceptually back in 79, 80, somewhere right in there. We're trying to figure out how we could bring the car back up to date and in all of its aspects, both the powertrain, the chassis system, and the body itself.
Corvette Chief Engineer Dave McClellan, along with Jerry Palmer's design team, were determined to make this the most advanced Corvette ever. From head to tail, it was going to be all new, different, and better than ever, both inside and out.
Dave was great to work with. He'd say, "Jerry, you've got carte blanche here. Do whatever you want to do." And he'd come over about once a week and we'd go over things, and he never said, "You can't do that." He said, "You're putting some challenges in front of me." Dave really was very instrumental in the chassis development of the car. He knew what he wanted to do, but a very significant thing that he did, he changed the angle of the drive line. Typically the engine and transmission are here and the drive shaft is at an angle going back to the rear wheels. Well, Dave was able to lower the engine, which lowered the hood considerably. That's why the C4 is as slick looking as it is. But the real proof of the pudding is when you go out to the proving grounds and you see a running model, which is usually a pretty rough vehicle. And usually you go out with the chief engineer or the development group at the proving grounds. The development group at the grounds, they're usually car nuts. The guys would say, "You got to get out to the grounds. We got a car out there I think you need to see." That could be either good or bad. When they say that, it needed some work or they're excited. But I seen the first C4 Corvette was pretty exciting with Dave McClellan.
The Milford Proving Grounds opened in 1924. This network of tracks and driving surfaces was the first dedicated automotive testing facility ever built. Drawings, calculations, notes, and models, those eventually became test vehicles that would wind up there to be pushed beyond the limits expected of a production car. With all of the new technology came new challenges that would push engineers to their limits as well.
So the first 83 prototype shows up at Milford Proving Grounds. Here it comes, they unload it off the truck. Everybody's standing around, not just the Corvette guys, everybody in the buildings oohing and eyeing over this thing as it gets unloaded in the garage. The 83 Corvette was kind of at the end of an era and the beginning of a new era in automotive engineering. And not just at GM, but all the car companies. But I think GM was kind of on the leading edge of this, more so than the other car companies, at least the American car companies. So The old way of doing business or engineering a car was, the design team designed the vehicle and built some test vehicles and some prototypes. And they sent them out to the development guys out at the test area at Proving Grounds. And then you drove these cars and developed them. And of course, you found all the deficiencies that the design guys forgot about or didn't, overlooked, didn't cover, didn't have the right tools to do the job, and fixed them. That was the job. That's how cars were engineered, in the 70s and early 80s. But the whole process was starting to change at that point in automotive history, because computers were becoming powerful enough now to do a lot more mathematical analysis than we'd ever been able to do before. And we were just learning to do it. And then also, at the same time, computers were beginning to be more useful to us in the testing area of vehicles as well. Larry Fletcher and I were assigned to do all the ride and handling on the 83. There was a lot of work to do in a very short amount of time. We didn't get the very first prototype until less than a year before it was supposed to be launched. I don't know all the reasons behind it, but I think at least in part, it was because of some of the last-minute engineering changes that were made to the vehicle. And so we only had about, I think the first vehicle showed up around September of '81. And it was basically supposed to be launched by August of '82 as an 83 and be in showrooms. When we discovered that we had some pretty serious issues to work out, that was when Fred made the decision to basically work around the clock. Fred was the absolute driver and engine behind the '83 Corvette. He was the first guy in the office in the morning. He was the last guy to leave. He followed every aspect of that car, from the design of it, to the development, to the engineering, the durability testing. Fred was on top of every aspect of that car. And he pushed everybody in the organization to be their best. We sort of false started here at Bowling Green. And we built out some cars, and we tested them and drove them, and we weren't satisfied with the way they performed. It became obvious to us that we still had some work to do. And so I know that car came up to Milford for a while, and Larry and I drove it, and we did a little bit of shock tuning on it, and then they sent it back here for a training car. And so ultimately, the decision at some point was made, we need to postpone the launch of the car, that we really weren't ready. There were a number of things that just still needed to be done. So let's postpone it and launch it after the first of the year. So instead of launching it in the fall of '82, we'll launch it in early '83.
After surviving Milford, the car was returned to Bowling Green Assembly, but by then, the '83 model year had already been scrapped. They were looking forward to 1984 because there were thousands of things that were still on the to-do list for '83, and new regulations had been popping up for '84. The old test fleet had served its purpose and had been ordered to be destroyed.
And one of the unique things that happened, we decided to destroy them here at the plant. Typically, other car plants, they'll put them on a carrier, they'll ship them up to Detroit or somewhere, and they dispose of them properly up there. At this point in time, they decided to do it locally at the plant, so they hired I don't know where the car crusher came from, but it's one of these enclosed little trailers, and they come in and they dispose of the car. We got down to one last car, and it's my responsibility to make sure I got rid of this vehicle. It just so happened on that particular day, it was really, really, really raining. And the reason I didn't want to go out, and it's kind of embarrassing to talk about at this point in time, and probably could have got me fired depending on who would have heard the story. But I had a brand new pair of cowboy boots on. I had just bought these boots. I paid a lot of money for what I thought they were. But I'm standing there looking at that car outside. I know we got to get it moved and get it disposed of. It's the last car And I look down at my feet and I see these boots on there, and I do I want to walk out in that parking lot with all the big puddles? And this car can wait. I can get around to it. I'll get it the next day, and no big deal. Responsible. People knew I typically did my job, got it done good. So I left it set. And I went home that night, came back in the next day to work. All intentions of getting that car, first thing in the morning. I was going to get in, go out there, get paperwork, get it brought in, get the VIN plate cut and all that stuff, what we got to do to dispose of them. And lo and behold, I come to find out that the car crusher had left. I said, what? I didn't know he was going to leave yet. Well, apparently the word got out that he was done. And again, I think this might have been tied into that car coming back from Milford, and the numbers getting mixed up on how many was going to be destroyed versus how many we needed to actually get destroyed. And so there the car's set, and I've got to decide what to do with it. I have to tell a few people that this car didn't get destroyed. It went over well with some of the others not so well, but keep in mind there was a lot of other emotion going on with 30th anniversary getting missed, not building a whole model year. People weren't really worried about that car, even though I was, because I had to look at it every day and decide what we were going to do with it. I didn't know we were going to have to ship it somewhere. So in the interim, I took it around, parked it around the back of the plant, and there it sat. And it sat, and it sat, and we threw a tarp over it for a while. And a couple of years came by, and it still sat. And nobody was going to worry or invest in hauling a car somewhere. Eventually, we'd get around to it. Management had changed. The upper management, plant managers that came and went. And that's where some of you, if you know the story of Paul Schnees, the plant manager, came in and asked a question about the car. Why is this car sitting back there, and nasty looking old car after a couple of years, right?
Paul Schnees, I was plant manager of the Corvette assembly plant, transferred there in June 1st of 1984. And within the first week being there, because they were doing such a great job anyway, I just told them I'd spend my time getting used to who the people are, meeting the people, and getting to know more about how the Corvette actually was built and how you produced it. And someplace in the first week or two, I was out walking and I had noticed a white car sitting over next to the powerhouse, and I asked Jack Gerbic, who was our production manager at the time, I said, what is that white car that I see parked over there in the same spot all the time? And he just turned to me, he says, well, that's our 83. And I kind of stopped where I was, and I says, talk to me about the 83. And he says, well, that was the assembly tryout car that they had when they started the vehicle before they decided to hold it up for 6 months. One of the prototypes was assigned to the plant as the assembly tryout car. I said, Jack, I think you have a car here that's worth something and kind of a one of a kind, because I don't think there's any 83s left that was built as part of your pilot system or even the pre-production system. A couple days later, I said, you know, why don't you go get that 83 and bring it into the plant and have somebody clean it up and get it started again and see if it runs. We wound up for a period of time, he decided, or his paint superintendent decided to put some striping on the bottom of it, so it was turned out red, white, and blue. And it was like that for about 6 months or so, and I said, let's go back and put it back like it was the day it was built. Don't change any panels. I want it strictly original as it was found when I got here a few weeks ago. So eventually that's what they did. They got the red, white, and blue off of it, and became pretty well known that we had it. And someplace online, Detroit finally agreed that they didn't need the car, and we requested we be able to keep the car and just put it on display and let all the people that come to the plant see the vehicle and let it be part of the history of the plant. So that's exactly what happened, and it stayed in the plant until the Corvette Museum was built after I retired. And by that time, we had decided that whatever point the museum wanted the car, we would take it over to the museum and let the museum have it, put it on display. And they were better suited to do that than we were as an assembly plant. And that's precisely what happened.
If you think about it, it's pretty remarkable that they were able to save this, the rarest of all Corvettes. Dumb luck, an act of God, a pair of boots, and the folks at the plant all conspiring together to save the world's only 1983 Corvette. Until next time, I'm Katie with the National Corvette Museum. Keep Corvetting and save the wave.
Now that we've got the fuel leak fixed, replaced the diaphragm and the throttle body, got it back together, now it's time to check and see if we have any more leaks and if it's ready to start. Key on, we should be getting fuel pressure up. So far, we're good. There's no visual leaks. Cross your fingers. Hey! What happened today is the 1983 Corvette. We got it running for the first time since it's been at the museum, and drove it around the lot, around the parking lot, and brought it back into the Sky Dome exhibit. Once I got to the source, first thing I check is, why does it not start? Obviously we had some extensive fuel issues that wasn't allowing it to run. We had a throttle body that was leaking also, so we get that fixed. Once I got everything fixed on that end, the next step was to go through the brake system, check the brakes. Minor issues with the brakes, got that fixed, and from that point, the car runs and drives and stops. Now the next process is for us to maintain that. We can't let them set, we've got to keep them running. It's an exciting, amazing feeling to be able to take the one and only car and bring it back to life. Thanks to our supporters, they've made it possible for not only the 83 to run, but all of the museum cars to be well taken care of and in running condition.